I'm sure by now we all know that conflict is inevitable in our relationships. But did you know that the quality of communication during conflict has the ability to improve not just the longevity of your relationship, but the level of depth and closeness that you feel with your intimate partner? That's why I'm doing this video, to help make sure you have the tools necessary to communicate effectively, even in conflict with your partner. For too many of us, we are choosing the wrong models and the wrong responses and the wrong role when we open our mouths to speak to our partner when we are angry with them or when they are angry with us. But there is a way to get better at conflict communication. There is a way to deepen the love and the understanding and the trust between you and your partner, even when you disagree strongly about important things in your relationship. Now, relationships have been found, research-based through psychology, and also brain-based studies have found that relationships matter to us in as high a degree as our need for food, clothing, and shelter. We need to be connecting with people. And the healthier our relationships are, it's the higher our level of self-confidence. It's the lower the feelings of anxiety and stress. It extends the length of our lives, and it increases our capacity for empathy and our ability to build better relationships that have trust and a measure of cooperation, or the ability to work together, which can be very, very useful in workplaces. So your ability to enjoy healthy relationships, especially with those closest to you, impact the quality of relationships you're going to have with the co-worker and with the absolute stranger on the road. Our relationships really and truly matter. And so I want us to begin focusing on every aspect of them as though they matter. Because like oxygen, we are depending on relationships to help us understand who we are, to understand our value, and to give us place in this world. Place to share, place to love, place to be loved, and place to feel accepted and part of a community. Now, relationships have a direct impact on our physical and mental well-being. But what I found interesting was the data around the impact that poor relationships or adverse relationships have on our health, or physical health, or cellular health, the ability of the body to be well. So one study, which happened in 2005, so we've been measuring this for quite a while. One study found that persons who were in hostile marriages, it took longer for their wounds to heal. What was happening is that the feeling of stress and anxiety coming out of those hostile marriages created inflammation in the body. And that inflammation made it harder for physical wounds on the body to heal. So they would have tracked over time persons in hostile marriages and persons who were in peaceful and happy marriages. And they had bruises just on the top of their hand or on their leg, nothing that went bone deep. But it took much longer for persons who were in hostile marriages to see the wounds heal, because the stress creates inflammation and reduces the body's ability to repair itself. Real physical impact. Another study in 2007 found that persons who were in adverse relationships, intimate relationships, were more at risk of developing heart complications than those who were not. And they tracked these individuals over the course of 12 years. And they were measuring against things like diet, exercise, sleep. And it didn't matter if you were practicing healthy behaviors around food, not drinking alcohol, not smoking, getting enough sleep or not. Whether or not you were doing any of those things, the fact that you were in an adverse intimate relationship increased the risk of developing heart complications. Another study in 2017 found that persons who were contemptuous of their partner, did not like them, had resentment carrying against the partner, were low-key angry but sweeping it under the rug and looking at the partner with a side eye, those persons had weaker immune systems, and they were more prone to contracting infectious illnesses like the cold and the flu. So in Jamaica, in my culture, we would call it having somebody up. So holding a grudge against them in your heart, doing that. So it may not be adverse and hostile, arguing every day, but just holding resentment against your partner. It was found to weaken the immune system of those individuals. And so they caught the flu and the cold more often than those who were exposed to the same elements but had happier, intimate relationships. So we know the benefit of having high quality relationships, and we also know the risk, the mental risk, and also the physical risk of being in hostile or adverse relationships. Knowing that conflict is inevitable, you want to make sure that conflict, which is a natural part of your relationship, does not lead to increased feelings of hostility between you and your partner. Unfortunately, that is actually the reality for many persons. The conflict becomes a gateway to building hostility, bruising the ego, disrespecting each other, and eventually disintegrating the trust and the respect and the relationship altogether. Now, I wanted to share with you some communication approaches that will help you to speak better in conflict. Because it is important for us to communicate when we are unhappy, when something bothers us, when something does not sit well with us. Because I value the importance of speaking up, saying what's on your mind, firmly, respectfully, honestly, clearly. I would never preach holding it in, not saying anything just to keep the peace and keep the other person happy, because that's not healthy. Remember we spoke about resentment being held in the heart and weakening the immune system. It has a negative impact. So I wanted to share with you in this video some strategies that can help you communicate more effectively with your partner during conflict. Now, there is a model and a spectrum that allows us to assess high quality and healthy communication in conflict and low quality destructive communication in conflict. At the lowest end of the spectrum is what we call active destructive communication. What is that? Active destructive communication is when you take on the role, and I want you to envision somebody doing this, the role of a fire starter. You see an opportunity for conflict, you step into the opportunity for conflict with a lighter or a matchstick, and you set it ablaze. Set it ablaze with accusatory statements, disrespectful comments, inviting the person into a shouting and a screaming match, threatening to leave the person or laying down ultimatums if they don't do what you need them to do, and stirring up, fueling essentially the fire. If you are a fire starter in your relationship, and maybe this is something you learned from watching persons in your family, in your close friend groups, handling conflict, maybe you learned that conflict had to be aggressive if you love the person and calling it passionate disagreement. But if you are the person taking on the fire starter role in a conflict, also known as the active destructive role in a conflict, here's what I want you to remember. Doing that diminishes the sense of safety that your partner has in the relationship, especially if you're threatening to leave them in every conflict. That is telling them that the relationship is volatile and that they cannot depend on you to stay with them through thick and thin. And because we need relationships, like we need a roof over our head, that sense of stability and certainty matters more than we even know. So you're diminishing the sense that the relationship can last and inviting your partner to disconnect and to start to distance themselves from the level of commitment that they may currently have. So you might think you're testing them to see if they're serious, if they're willing to go through thick and thin with you, which I've spoken about in another video, that toxic view, that hardship is essential to building a good relationship. And so let's make it hard on purpose. If that is what you're thinking, I want you to understand that the threats of leaving, the threats of abandoning your partner prepares them emotionally to eventually abandon you. So you're not keeping them closer. You might see them again another day, another week, another month, but emotionally they are disengaging with each threat that you make to leave them. The other thing I want you to understand is that when you are engaged in conflict, the goal is not to amplify the conflict, but to diffuse it. And taking a fire starter role does what we don't want to do. It escalates the conflict. So the war of words, saying things that will be heard and can never be taken back or unheard. threatening to do things that probably you have no intention of doing. But if the person decides to call your bluff, you might be forced to do it to show that you are serious about your word. Or they call your bluff and you don't execute, devaluing whatever merit or worth your word might have, because you say you're going to do it, but we all know you're not going to do it. So it escalates the conflict and diminishes the trust, but inflates your ego, because of course you walk away thinking that you have won. Essentially, a game that you're really losing. The second role that we are sometimes playing is called the pressure cooker role. I want you to imagine a pressure cooker that has steam building inside of it. The pressure cooker is sealed with rubber, so none of that steam is getting out, so it's all building up and creating very real pressure for things that are underneath that lid. Now that is what we call the passive destructive role in conflict. And the way we communicate in a passive destructive way is to ignore the issue altogether and also ignore the partner. Now that can look like giving people the silent treatment. And when you give people the silent treatment, it is a way of punishing them and ensuring that they feel invisible, insignificant, and unloved. They walk away from a silent treatment experience believing that they do not matter to you. Another way that the pressure cooker approach to conflict could be showing up in the communication relationship. So either we're saying nothing, which is the silent treatment, or we are pretending or refusing to accept that there is an issue to be discussed. And so we want to continue sweeping things under the rug or dropping them in the pressure cooker and sealing the lid, because we have been taught to see conflict as a dangerous and negative thing. When conflict comes up in a relationship, some of us have been made to think that it is evidence of us being broken beyond repair, versus seeing conflict as an opportunity to better understand your partner and work towards repairing any misunderstanding. So whatever the social programming you have around conflict, especially conflict in relationships, intimate relationships, that programming could be guiding your refusal to admit that there is in fact a conflict, an issue, a problem, because you think that admitting that there is a problem is admitting that your relationship is over. And that is not the case. It is ignoring the problem and allowing the pressure to build up under the lid until you hear that squeaky sound coming out as it whistles in the pressure cooker with the steam easing out of the top. That is actually what is going to put your relationship at risk. Pretending that there is no problem and ignoring the problem until the lid blasts off. We don't want that either. So we can't ignore the problem and we can't ignore the person, because those things are a passive, destructive way of dealing with and communicating or refusing to communicate through the conflict that we are having. Another perspective that a pressure cooker approach might be fueled by is thinking that being silent and holding your feelings in when it hurts and when it ought to be spoken about in a transparent and honest way, repressing your feelings is evidence of resilience and strength. Resilience and repression are two different things. Resilience, in order to build resilience, you have to recognize that there is a challenge and a problem, admit it, look it squarely in the eye, and begin to work through it. And as you work through it, getting to the end brings you back to a state of peace, balance, equilibrium. Repression is when something throws you off your equilibrium. You are unbalanced, but pretending to be balanced, pretending that nothing is wrong, which doesn't give you the opportunity to work through the conflict, to deepen understanding of yourself and your partner, to come up with some strategies and solutions so that this doesn't happen again in the relationship, and then truly get back to a space of equilibrium. So if you think that repressing your emotions is a sign of strength, it's actually a sign of weakness. Lacking the courage to speak up and share what you are feeling, or a weakness in the communication habits of your relationship, because there is no pathway to opening up honestly and talking about how you are feeling and how things are impacting you. It could also be a demonstration that there is a lack of trust between partners, because you don't trust the other person to hear you and to work honestly with you to resolving the conflict or the issue. So now I'm inviting you to pause and reflect a little bit. What has been your approach on the destructive spectrum of conflict communication? Have you found instances, as I've been sharing with you, have instances come up in memory where you were passive destructive or active destructive in dealing with conflict and communicating through conflict with your intimate partner? Or as you assess how your partner communicates in conflict, what role do they take on? The active destructive fire starter or the passive destructive pressure cooker role? You can let me know in the comments what you find for yourself or for your partner related to the destructive spectrum. Now, the other communication model during conflict is what I call the doormat model, where you are passive constructive. Now, the doormat analogy here is really allowing people to walk all over you, silently forgiving them and hoping for the best. Now, sometimes in a relationship, silently forgiving a partner and allowing them grace and opportunity to approach this again from another angle can work. An example, you come into the house after a hard day's work, you say good evening to your partner, honey, hi, how are you? And they respond to you with an attitude, with aggression. What you can do if you are practicing a passive constructive response is to not engage on the attitude they've given you, probably go to the next room, move to another task, and choose to give them a moment to cool off, hoping that in 5 minutes they will be doing a little better. Taking that to the extreme, though, is allowing a series of aggressive and disrespectful statements to be made several times throughout the day, several days in the week, several weeks in the month, and saying nothing, hoping it will get better. When over time, all evidence is pointing to this becoming a habit, but you are choosing to be the doormat and say nothing. So there are moments here, exceptions to every rule, of course. There are moments here where choosing to be passive constructive in your communication, allowing the moment to pass and not choosing to engage it, and giving your partner time to get over it or move past it, it can be beneficial. But you have to be careful here, because while this approach can lead to a relationship lasting longer, it doesn't mean that the relationship is getting stronger. And the research and data around communicating through conflict has found that it is only active, constructive communication that creates strength of trust, understanding, and commitment in a relationship, because that is how we get to understand how our partner is feeling, what our actions are being interpreted as for them, and how we can change or amend our approach to situations so our partner feels understood, cared for, and loved, and vice versa. Active, constructive communication. So while the passive, constructive communication, which is not choosing to be aggressive, rude, to engage in disrespect, and just being silent and allowing it to pass, forgiving them, not holding them up with resentment in your heart, but giving them room and grace. While that does have a place and a role, if you're not careful, you can turn yourself into a doormat with that sort of passive constructive response to conflict. So for it to be considered active and constructive communication in conflict with your intimate partner, you must say something. And here's what that looks like. An issue has resurfaced or has surfaced for the first time. It is a challenge for you. It violates some principle or some boundary, some understanding or core values that you believe you and your partner share, on which your relationship is built or ought to be built. It happens. You say to your partner, sweetheart, honey, this thing has happened, and you speak about the thing, not the person, not pointing fingers, not calling names. This thing has happened. This was said, this was done, and this is how it makes me feel. And I feel this way because, you can go deeper if you understand the roots of that feeling and why it has triggered that intense emotional response for you. But importantly, you must acknowledge that this thing has happened and speak specifically about how it makes you feel without naming, targeting, shaming, disrespecting your intimate partner. Now, this is a two-way street. After you have said that, the active, constructive communication requires your partner to either A, ask a question, to see if they are fully understanding you. B, acknowledge that what has happened truly did happen, because if we're going to gaslight each other and pretend like you're making it up, it is unhealthy and it will lead nowhere except to more conflict. Accepting and admitting that this in fact did happen, perhaps giving added context to the other side of what has happened, maybe understanding a little bit more what perspective your partner was coming from when they did something or said something, will ease the chafing and the sense of hurt that you're feeling around it. But maybe it doesn't. They give you context, they give you perspective, and you still feel as offended, as hurt, as disappointed as before. They accept that they have caused you pain and discomfort. They go further to apologize for that. You accept that apology, and there is some shared agreement that you come to know about what we will do in the future to make sure this is not repeated. Now, this takes maturity, and it takes the full commitment of both partners who are involved in this intimate relationship. One person cannot have active constructive communication during conflict, while the other person is choosing active destructive communication in a conflict. Both partners have to come to an agreement that this is how we want to speak to each other when we are feeling angry. These are the things we will not say to each other when we are feeling angry. These are the times, the days, and the ways that we don't try to resolve conflict, because the WhatsApp messages don't work. The phone call doesn't work. Telling our parents, who then come back and tell the spouse, it doesn't work. Making a cryptic WhatsApp status update or post on Twitter doesn't work. So these are the things we're not going to do, and instead, this is how we're going to handle it. You have to have commitment on both ends for communication through conflict to work. If both partners are committed to the longevity of the relationship, to the strength and quality of the relationship being improved over time, then this is the model and the communication approach that you have to take. Active, constructive communication during conflict. Now, while this is the best model to use to communicate through conflict, it is often the most difficult because of the lens that we bring to conflict. Believing that if I admit to a problem, I, as a person, I am wrong, and I am bad, and I'm unfixable or need to be fixed, and I will not be loved, and my partner will abandon me. My bringing up an issue makes me a burden to my partner, and so they will leave me to find somebody who is easier to deal with. And we get so concerned about not being easy to get along with. We don't recognize the value of hardship if we treat it constructively to deepen trust, understanding, and commitment between us and our intimate partner. Now, I have an online course that assists persons who struggle to communicate, struggle to speak up for themselves, struggle to push back and set boundaries, struggle to engage even their intimate partner with issues that bother them. So they're walking around the house, slamming cupboards, throwing dishes in the sink, hoping to communicate that they need the space to be tidy, instead of speaking up for themselves, using actual words to outline the problem, outline how it makes them feel, and give their partner an opportunity to work on a shared agreement or shared solution moving forward. So we actually have a lecture that we had done around the duty and obligation we have to speak up for ourselves, especially in our intimate relationships. If you are a burnt out, stressed out mom, as we had shared in our course, then that particular lecture would be so useful for you to come up with the words and the approach and the courage to say what you need to say to your intimate partner in a loving way, in a firm and honest way, and to do that consistently so that it builds trust, connection, and joy between you and your partner. Saying what you feel might not bring you joy, but working on the solution and seeing how that is improving the quality of your relationship certainly will. So you can check out the links in the comment bar below to register for my public speaking course. It's called Speak with Courage, and we cover a range of modules from speaking up in the workplace to speaking up with your children to speaking up with your intimate partner, and to developing a voice that is authentically yours that you can use to say what's on your mind, moving the thought from head so it comes off beautifully on your tongue. So if you're afraid of public speaking, if you're worried that people will judge you, if you are worried about people being offended by what you have to say, and so you choose to be a people pleaser, instead of saying honestly what you feel and asking bravely for what you need, our online course would be helpful for you. So you can click the link and get registered right away. We are open for enrollment. It's rolling enrollment, so we never close. And it's a 6-week self-paced online course. So whatever your schedule is, your course is built to be suited to that personal schedule. But I also know that you may need help to audit your relationship. And so that's why I have included in my life planner, we call it the Success Farmer's Guide, a relationship audit tool. So if you get our 2023 edition of the planner, the link is below for you to join the waitlist so you can get the special announcement when it's time to actually pre-order the planner. You can join our waitlist right now. Our planner actually has a relationship audit segment as part of our quality of life assessment tool. And that's what's different about my planner. We don't just allow you to get straight to the goals and talk about what you want to achieve, but we set an emotional baseline and we gauge the emotional temperature, the emotional intelligence that you're bringing into the goal setting. So you can see yourself as you truly are before you start to plan and aspire and manifest what you want. It's important to create the kind of soil that goals like that would flourish in. So if you would like to join the waitlist to secure our 2023 Success Farmer's Guide, the link is in the description bar below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this session has been useful for you and gives you the language, the tools, the mindset, the approach, the courage to communicate through conflict with your partner, and that the tools we have on offer on the Success Farm can help you to go a little bit deeper, whether through our public speaking course or through our life planner, which coaches you through the relationship audit and the whole life assessment to help you locate the real sense of well-being and joy that is present in your life right now, and what to do to build more joy and heighten that sense of well-being as you go through life. Thanks again for watching this video, and if there's anybody you know who could be served by it, be sure to share it with them. If you haven't subscribed as yet, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you are notified with each new video. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment bar below. If anything emerged for you as you were watching, drop it in the comment bar below. And if you have a topic that you'd love for us to explore in a future video, drop it in the comment bar below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon.